again, you gotta, you have to hire a lawyer right away.
If you're injured after a slip and fall in New York City, could you have a case to sue, and how do you get help? Well, we're going to find out right now on this episode of Ask the Lawyer. Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com. My guest is New York City attorney Jeffrey Antin, and I will remind you right off the top, if you'd like to ask Jeff questions about your situation, it's easy. Go to AskTheLawyers.com, click the button up at the top that says Ask a Lawyer, and fill out the very simple form. Doesn't cost you anything to ask your questions, or you can call the phone number that you'll see on the screen during our conversation. Jeff, it's nice to see you again. Thank you for making some time to help us out.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So do you see a lot of these in the city, and where generally do most of these happen? Are they city sidewalks or businesses, residences? Help me out.
Basically, basically city is just, one big sidewalk. And, a lot of times these sidewalks are not level. Pieces or sections of sidewalk could be higher than other sections of sidewalk. I mean, there are many, many tripping hazards out there that, if you're not looking down, which nobody does, who's looking down as you're walking down the street? That most people just look straight ahead. So if you're not looking down every step of the way, there's a good chance that you're going to catch your foot on a tripping hazard.
So in that situation, Jeff, whose responsibility is it for those sidewalks? Is it the city? Is it the landowner, the landlord? Whose responsibility?
All right. Well, about 18 years ago, the city transferred liability for maintenance of the sidewalks, basically, from the city itself to commercial and more than 3-family residential buildings. So now, if you happen to trip and fall or slip and fall, we could be talking about the snow and ice case as well. If you trip and fall or slip and fall in front of an apartment building or a commercial building or a store, as a practical matter, that's whatever building, store, business, whoever owns that piece of property is technically liable for the maintenance of the sidewalk and potentially for your injuries if you can prove that it was that you fell because of something that they did or didn't do.
In your experience, tell me about these injuries a little bit. How serious can these injuries be?
Listen, these can be multiple, people who sustain multiple fractures. I've seen, bimallear or trimallear fractures, ankle fractures, needing multiple surgeries. Listen, you could break your nose, you could smash your face. I mean, the injuries run the whole gambit. There's no, there's no minimum or maximum, I guess.
Is there a quick rule of thumb, maybe, Jeff, that someone could go by to determine whether they may actually have a case, or do you recommend they contact an attorney in any situation where they're injured in a slip, trip, or fall to see if they have a case?
If you're the injured person, show the lawyer, where exactly you fell, and the lawyer will be able to tell you whether or not there's some. Put this, the lawyer will be able to give you a general idea whether or not there might be some kind of actionable defect. Oftentimes an attorney might have to rely upon an engineer or somebody to come out and do, take some kind of measurements to determine whether or not there is a defect that caused someone to fall.
Let's talk a little bit about those slip and falls, weather-related conditions, hazardous conditions. What's the responsibility there for the landowner or the business owner? What's the responsibility?
Well, basically, if you slip and fall during a storm, you have no case. Okay, let's start there. There's a storm in progress doctrine in New York, basically, that just says, you can't. There's no obligation for the property owner to do anything with regard to maintaining the sidewalk until after a reasonable time, after it stopped the precipitation. So, And then there's also a period of time, I believe, in the morning. In other words, I think let's say it snows overnight, where you get until I'm not sure, it's 8 o'clock. It might be 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, until you're obligated to make any kind of efforts to clear the snow or ice from the sidewalk.
What about private businesses, stores, that sort of thing? I would imagine during the wintertime there's a lot of people coming in with wet shoes and slushy and all that sort of stuff. What's the responsibility for the store to maintain that?
Yeah, those are harder cases. I mean, again, it's during a storm in progress. It's the same thing. They don't have the way the cases basically read is they don't really have any obligation to put down any mats or anything like that inside a store. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it's the same thing as storm in progress. And if you get hurt in a store while it's snowing out or raining out or whatnot, part of it has to do with the fact that people drip water into the store. So a lot of times it's hard to.
Right.
Nobody could say for sure how long water was on the floor before you fell. People walk in with umbrellas all the time. They're wet umbrellas. They drip water. So, unfortunately, the defense is going to rely upon or try to rely upon the fact that you can't say for how long a period of time the floor was wet before you fell. I mean, that's the problem with those kinds of cases.
I think you've helped a lot of people clarify a lot of information for us today, Jeff. Thank you so much for making some time to help us out.
Thank you again. Thank you, too.
That'll do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been New York City Attorney Jeff Antin. I will remind you, if you'd like to ask Jeff questions about your situation, go to askthelawyers.com. Click the button up at the top of the page that says Ask a Lawyer, and it'll walk you through the process right there. It doesn't cost you anything to ask your questions. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with Ask the Lawyers.